So you're familiar with the fact that basically it was running into you at camp that I was like, I'm going to do it.
I saw that. Yeah, I remember that conversation. I
Yeah.
remember you saying to me, I don't know, it was like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. It
Yeah.
was you and Katie came walking in and we were talking, and you just said to me, you said, "This place screams podcast." And I was,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't really know that much about podcast.
Right.
But then I think it was last summer we saw each other again,
Yeah.
and you had told the story. You
Yeah.
said, "Oh," came up to me and said, I think you're right about that," you know. And
Yeah.
I was. I don't know how many, thousands of listeners have agreed now, but I
So
just assumed. I was listening to you talk. I think it was Michael when you were talking about the videos in particular, and I was kind of surprised at how little access there is to the videos now. It sounds like there's not a lot of videos out there to watch.
I think you have to be a cowl. I think that's it.
Right.
I think that's the ticket.
Yeah, but they said that they didn't have that many.
Yeah. So where did they go is my question. Cause I thought that Gail had all of them. That was always like at the end of the year, she had a copy, right?
Well, when I worked, when I was a younger camper there, they had an office up at Gail's office. So, up behind the pool.
Mm-hmm.
And they had all of the master tapes in there for like 25 years back, and I don't know what happened to all of those. I don't know if anybody ever dealt with them digitally. It sounds like they did, and they maybe just wore down and, are trashed.
That would be awful. That would be awful if that were the case.
Yeah.
But
I don't have one or two, but that's all I've got.
Yeah.
I have a few tapes from when we did it. That was it.
Are they on video too?
Yeah, they're still.
Yeah.
Because I transferred them, so I don't think I have a VCR. I heard that you go on eBay and you can sell VCRs for $400 and $500 now.
Oh, jeez.
People home videos on them.
So when I started this whole thing, and you understand your part in that at this point, there were so many things I was talking about that I was like, we got to get someone on here who knows what I'm talking about from like when I was a camper, like in the 90s, in the early 90s. And you were always the person I had in mind, because did you grow up? When did you start at camp?
See, I only did a few years as a camper. I was like an Apache in about 1987, in that range. Oh. And then I was Mohican. Then I did 2 years at Explorer. So I was like the older starter.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
A couple of guys from Medfield that were my friends were heading over there each summer. And then my mom got me involved, later on. But I did not have a lot of camper years. I think it was only 3 or 4.
It's almost like the lure around you. I would have assumed you were there. Well, I feel like not everyone way back in the day was starting as a tenderfoot at 4 and 5 years old. We got a lot of solid people later on.
There were some, I think, that did all the way through. I remember the Draft Girls had done it. Remember Abby and Jesse?
Yes.
They were long time campers,
Maybe she'll be back for the 50th. Who knows?
I think so. I think you're going to see a lot of faces.
I'm really excited. It'd be awesome. Yeah. I want to know everything about overnight. So you did them for what, 4 years as a camper?
Did them. I was a CIT and an assistant still when they were doing them.
Yeah.
And then.
Yeah.
So did you not do overnight? I mean, you must have been a camper at an overnight, were you?
2 years. 2 years, okay. And then they stopped. And we, like Aaron and I were talking about it. I mean, that was like the lead up to having overnights was so incredible. And then when you finally made it, it was just awesome. And like, I was like a nervous overnight person. Like I was like the kid, if I was doing a sleepover with someone, there was 50-50. I was gonna, have to call mom. But it like at camp, it was like a non-issue. It was so much fun. And I'm sure that was like, my love for camp, and then just like all of the stuff they had us doing there. But so, we do these 2 years of overnights, and then they just stop. And then it's just like, I just want to hear about it. Cause as I got older and older, I was like, now what were the counselors doing? Like that must've been pretty fun for them.
thing is that, when you're a CIT and an assistant, you're still pretty young. Mm-hmm. And if I had to guess, I've heard that the reason they got rid of overnights was because of insurance or this and that. But if it was behavioral, it certainly would have been the people that I was with, me and the people that I was with, because we were people up all night, walking around everywhere. I remember at one time we threw a can of Raid, or what is that bug spray, off a can into the fire, and it exploded. And Tom running out into the woods because he heard it. It was like a bomb.
Oh my God.
And we were CITs at the time, so we were terrified, and we blamed it on campers that were in a tent.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I think they had firecrackers, but yeah, I would say that as a young CIT and a young assistant, that was probably one of the reasons they got rid of it, was just because we were just not behaving in that 13, 14, 15-year-old range.
Right.
And everybody was exhausted the next day.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, as a kid, I remember getting sleep, not very much, but getting sleep, but I can't imagine having to work. I mean, you were working 48 hours straight.
Yeah, it was awful. And, and I didn't really, at the night, it was great. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, we were having a blast, but then that next day, I mean, we'd be dragged. And I remember I went home one time as, 13, 14 years old. I got home and I remember my mother was like, oh, take a shower. I started the shower, and before she even came back, she just heard the water running. I was dead asleep on the floor in front of the bathroom, because I was so,
Wow.
I slept in days.
Yeah. So. Yeah. While working outside in the summer in the heat. Yeah.
Right.
It catches up with you.
Right. And the heads and Tom, they were pretty good at busting you on that too. Like, if they knew if you were up all night, they would give you certain chores throughout the day that were not things you would normally do.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom was always good at reading stuff like that in general. Like he was gonna push it to the brink for like just a good laugh. Like he knew. I always knew. So where did you we talked about we've like kind of like conquered almost what the activities were, but for the counselor hunt, where did you have a spot that you typically stayed in, and like what was that?
No,
like?
I was still kind of young, so I was playing the game almost as hard as the campers were, because I didn't want to get caught. It was important to me not to get caught.
Sure.
And so I don't know. I don't remember exactly where we would hide. We thought it might have been a good spot. We'd go to whatever that mill was. Remember if you went down the right past Pioneering?
Yep.
There was like a wood mill there.
Yeah.
I think, myself and Scott Janovitz would be, hiding in there thinking we wouldn't get caught. Yep. And then along come with a couple of explorers like, hey, we got you. Back,
right. Yeah.
So.
Tom's like, all right, I'll take the kids. The rest of my staff scatter.
Right.
Good luck.
Right. And there were boundaries, but nobody stuck to them.
Oh.
I remember being all the way out as a camper and a counselor in the counselor hunt, all the way out in the blueberry patches, up power lines. And that was a absolute no, but it didn't matter. I remember people hiding on top of buildings, inside of the attics of buildings.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's I love how like in the woods was in bounds. Like that was okay. Like that, maybe that would have been a good boundary. But
I think one thing that you missed when you were talking about, I did hear you talking about the overnights.
Mm-hmm.
And the big part of the overnight was the bonfire and the sing that would go on around the bonfire.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember that.
The Lotties. Yeah.
I ended up becoming a pretty big Beatles fan in particular, because I was kind of young. I was much more interested in sports at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I would listen to a lot of sports radio and this and that. I wasn't exposed to a lot of music at that point. And I remember John Svetke. Do you remember him? He was the video counselor when I was an explorer.
Oh, I don't. Okay.
He was he had long hair, glasses, he was an interesting character. And I remember they would sit there they had a couple of guitars around the bonfire, and they would always close out the night with The Long and Winding Road.
Oh,
they would sing a bunch of Beatles songs, around the campfire. It was more adult. It was more older kid oriented. You weren't doing as much of the green grass stuff.
Right.
It was kind of cool. We were listening to, we were hearing more rock music,
Oh, that's, that I totally believe it. Cause I do remember the guitars being there. And I know there was always at Sing, someone had a guitar, but yeah. I remember doing the Lotties, hey Lottie, that. And then, the FCDC Blues, I think had a little run for a year or two.
Yeah. There was also a show at the theater.
Yes.
At night.
Oh, I remember that big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember being in I was in a Guns N' Roses cover band.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why I call it a cover band. It was basically just us.
Yeah.
Nothing about what we were doing, and I for another time I was in a Def Leppard one.
Oh, good for you.
Sugar on Me, and I was the drummer, and I had the arm tucked back, so I was just banging like this, and I remember looking out, and there was a few counselors just roaring laughing that I did that. Yep. They were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he's doing that,"
Right.
But I didn't know not to do it. I didn't do it for laughs. I did it because that was the character.
Right. You got to stay true to the band. Yeah.
Right.
One of the first times I remember really putting together what camp was, everything about it and how much I loved it was because I would go for 6 weeks, and then just how much darker it was at the show at the third session than it was the first session. And I have a weird memory of sitting watching the show because it was all of the counselors who would perform, and that was great. And I was like, oh man, it's super dark out now. It's, whatever, 8:00. And then I would be like, oh, that's a bummer. We only have 2 more days of camp. And then it's that was kind of the start of my being like, wow, I really love it here. And just kind of watching all of the counselors do their thing. And I don't know, I have these weird, just moments that are kind of etched in my brain that I associate now with things that have happened at camp. But
yeah, it's a lot of fun. Until you just mentioned it, I had kind of forgotten that it led into the last 2 days of every session.
Yeah.
So at Wednesday overnight, you were almost done in that 6th week.
Mm-hmm.
I've forgotten all about that. Yeah. You only had one day after that day of exhaustion,
Right. Yeah. There was one in the 2 years that I did it. There was one time that it rained. So they actually pushed the overnight to Thursday night. And I don't think it was the last day of camp, but I remember being like, that even at my young age, I was like, that feels like a lot of logistics I'm not interested in.
Right.
But it's interesting you say that, that's where you kind of were exposed to the Beatles, because one of the things I've talked about a lot, and I would say even before the podcast, is that my sense of music for sure was impacted by camp. And a lot of that is from you because you were in charge of the music at video. And when I would babysit Jack and Michael Cowell and rummage through the VHS tapes, all of those songs on there, I'm like, these are my favorite songs. So Counting Crows, big time. I was like that. I talked about, there was a video you did when you just went to Taco Bell and just dubbed over Candlebox. And I was like, yeah.
And actually you had the wrong song because I don't have the tape to prove it, but I know it was,
it's
was
far behind. Yeah.
Not you. Yeah. But I mean, I heard you say that. I heard that you, and that's cool. I was happy to hear that you said that because that was always what I thought. I just wanted to put on music that I liked, that I thought everybody should be hearing, Now, looking back, I do get a little I'm not embarrassed, but definitely I don't think, some of those songs shouldn't have been there,
Yeah. You don't think River of Deceit was a good one to
Right. I mean, I love them and I still do. I just saw Counting Crows this past summer. I still love Counting Crows, Yeah. But I and they were fine. But Gail did come to me before my last year in video and said she didn't want to hear that music anymore. You know,
Really?
she gave me a list of things that she was interested in hearing in particular. And then she said she wanted it toned down, you know? And so that was why that last year in particular, if you look at the 98 master tape, it was a lot more like, I think I did like maybe Eagles and Fleetwood Mac and a little more just iconic things that everybody knew than those previous years when you were hearing Counting Crows, Alice in Chains, you know. She
That's really funny. I remember I think it was called like the Behind the Camp video that you and Tom did. Is that what
when we came back?
Yeah. So tell us about that, how that came to fruition and what it was.
I had the idea. I remember, you know, we were both out of camp for about 2 or 3 years at that point. And I forget if he had come to me or if I came to him with the idea that we wanted to do something. You know, we were both still living in the area. I don't know where Tom lives now, but at the time, you know, we were both still living in Medfield or Franklin or wherever. And I had an idea of what I wanted to do, and he had an idea of what he wanted to do. He wanted to do The Hobbit was a big movie that year.
Okay.
And not The Hobbit. I'm sorry. The Lord of the Rings, the first one.
Oh, okay, sure. So
he wanted to do a takeoff of that and do like this big camp production with Fellowship of the Rings and blah blah blah. And in my head, I was always a big fan of that behind the music, true Hollywood story. And it popped into my head at one point, like, we should do that on Gale, you know, that type of thing. And, you know, and I'll just write the whole thing. I remember I didn't give anybody the opportunity to say their own lines because I had it all written down the way I wanted, you know? And I remember he was kind of like, well, listen, I want to do the other thing. I said, no, trust me, this will be good. You know, this will work. And so we did it. And then he used his, you know, editing talents and, you know, nailed it, of course. And it was funny. It came out really good. I don't have a copy of that. I would like to have it.
Ooh, who does Tom have a copy of that?
I know Kelly does.
Okay.
I've seen house before.
Okay.
I don't know who else has. I did have one at one time, but I lost one in one of my moves, you know?
That was like, so when you guys came back, you had been gone for a couple of years, but it was still like, you were Bill and Tom, right? Like you were like, we all knew like these were the video guys.
Some people that didn't know who we were, but generally, I mean, people had been there, you know, and that still existed, you know?
But so the general overview of the story, as I remember it, is that Behind the Camping. So for anyone who's like not a particular age, they're probably like, what is Behind the Music? But you know, it was like the real story behind the camp. And so wasn't it that something to the effect of like, I remember a line from Bonnie being like, I gotta get the benefits because she was trying to get pregnant.
So they wanted health benefits.
Right.
And
so they were
doctors went on strike. That's what Bonnie was, you work here, we don't get any health benefits, no life insurance, nothing, you know? And I remember, you know, we had this thing where he said, oh, and it got worked out in some way. And all of a sudden you saw Gale pass it was a pillowcase with a $$ sign on it. And she passed it to Bonnie. And that was like, Bonnie took the payoff. And I remember I had Gale saying, you know, these people were ridiculous. They work here 6 weeks a year. They want benefits. But I had to write it all on my own because if I didn't, it wouldn't have worked, you know?
Right. Yeah. So. Well, and that was like, it was just a teeny bit different from like a regular video week where, I mean, it was totally scripted. But it was so cool, you guys coming back and like shooting this video because we're like, what's going on? And it was like, you know, typically when you're asked to be in a video just for the end of the week thing, it's like, all right, do this. And, you know, here's a general direction. And this is like, we're putting something together and then we get to see it like one off. It was awesome.
I was glad to do it, but I also remembered, I felt bad. I don't remember who the video counselors were at the time. But I remember, you know, we put it at the end of their regular video. So they had their week, and and they just had the basic editing equipment of the camp, and and we came in and we put that thing together, and it was great,
Agree.
And I did kind of feel bad. I felt like we kind of showed them up a little bit on that, and I didn't want to do that,
Yeah.
But Tommy, he was so talented with that stuff. He nailed it.
Tell us about the Free the Juice video.
That was a counselor video.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Yeah, we couldn't, that one wasn't going on. So, OJ had that week, where he had been arrested, and I think the Bronco chase had already happened, and I just had that stupid megaphone. I don't know why I had it. I don't remember what was going on.
Yep.
But I remember I just started screaming like, "Free OJ, free the juice," and people were laughing. So I just kept going with it, and and then I remember I ended up out on the road with the megaphone saying, "Free the juice, free the juice." And I remember, the funniest part about that was we showed that at the counselor end of the year party.
Yeah.
And I went into the bathroom, and Sue Rice's ex-husband was in there talking to, I don't remember who the other guy was, but remember the Jamin or
yep.
I forget his father.
Jamin. Yep.
Right. So the two of them were in there laughing, and they were at the urinal, and they go, "Free the juice, free the juice." That guy, there's no way he's going to be back here next year. I was sitting in the back of the bathroom, and I was like, oh my God, am I going to get fired? I didn't know that,
Right.
But Tom always was pretty good at protecting us, especially the Medfield guys.
Well,
the way I ended up in video, I don't know if you were probably a camper at the time.
Mm.
Carl was the head in video with Tommy. Tommy was his assistant.
Oh, okay.
And I was an assistant out in Adventure or wherever,
Mm-hmm.
And Carl's videos, if you remember, they were very scattered. He had never been told like what to do, I don't think,
Right.
So a lot of it was just kids running around, loud music, and they would turn lights off and on to create a strobe effect, and it was just all of the videos were that, but he had to go away one week. He had something he had to do in his personal life, and Tom said, "Do you want to try it with Tommy for the week?" And I said, "Yeah, that'd be great."
Yeah.
So Tommy and I worked that 1 week that summer of '93, and we did a video together that week.
Okay.
And it was pretty good. I mean, it was rough,
right.
But it was better than anything else that had been going on,
right. Yep.
So the following year was how we ended up being put together. Because Carl decided not to come back.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you and Tom Gomet the same age?
No, he's a few years younger than me. He's 1 or 2 younger than me.
Okay. Oh, that's it's so funny how my mind just kind of everything's just like an amalgam together. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I thought maybe you didn't know how that all went down.
No, because you're right. Like, I mean, my memory of you, and I know all my like peers, like Bill Danner video, like, and like rules the camp kind of whatever. Like, I think I mentioned on one of the podcasts, I have a memory of you just coming out to a campsite and we were having tacos and you're like, oh, what do we have here? And you had taco sauce. Like,
it's fun. I was laughing when you said that because I don't have it quite in my pocket anymore. But I have certain sauces in my car, in my backpack work, and they're all things for certain moments,
Hey, I mean, good. So the camp is a place you learn life skills. That's great.
Yeah.
I want to talk about something. So when you say Tom kind of protected his Medfield guys, was Tom actively recruiting you guys to come to camp to work or to come as campers?
For us, yeah. I mean, because we were already campers, and he was our gym teacher. You know what I mean?
Right.
During the year.
Yeah.
So we had the advantage. It was just a lot of times it would just be like, "Hey, you guys going to camp?" Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there were quite a few people. Karen came in that way because he was not working there. He needed somebody. He knew Karen. He was her basketball coach. He knew what her personality was. It was easy for him and it was easy for us. It was because he knew the kids, we knew him, bang,
Yeah.
So that's why he was able to recruit so well from Medfield.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You think of the people, because Medfield had such a huge presence, and I think it feels huge because the personalities you brought in worked, and that makes sense. That Tom's like, yes, maybe not. Yes. Yeah.
Well, Medfield at that time too, everybody, in that town had a very similar sense of humor. It was a very sarcastic sense of humor that came out of that town.
That's great.
I don't know where it started, why it started that way, but just we all had it, and it would mesh well with camp. It did really well.
Yeah. It's so interesting because like there's a very strange, just in thinking back about camp and everything, weird push and pull of like what dictated what, right? Like, was it people bringing in their outside stuff, or was it the camp like amplifying all of these like quirky personalities that has kind of led to this place now that I would say, and I said somewhere else, that I feel like there were a lot more new people coming in like earlier on, whereas now people just don't leave. It's like, we love this place, we're never leaving. But when you had new people coming in and like bringing in just like outside stuff, it kind of helped to grow it to what it is today, where things that are like.
Absolutely. You'd probably be surprised to hear me say this because this is not somebody that you would think I would think of. But remember Mary Ann, the music teacher?
Yep.
She probably changed things more than anybody.
Oh, how so?
She did Black Sox. She did Crocodiliomai. All of those things came from her.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. She was, I was an assistant or so when she came in, but all of those things started when she joined camp.
Wow.
She had a huge effect on camp.
Wow. So for people who don't know Mary Ann, was she a teacher?
I don't know who she was on the outside. I just remember, when she became the music counselor, but I'm not really sure where she came from, but I think of her when I think about new counselors and how they impact things.
She was like an older woman, not like a like a high school, college age person who came.
No, she's probably in her 50s, I would think.
Yeah. That's funny you say that. I didn't know about, I didn't know she brought Crocodilia or Black Sox. I remember her bringing, that's like, all God's creatures got a place in the choir. Right. Something, that one. You can sing along at home. Wow. All right. I like it.
But and then when we were bringing in Dave, right? Dave and Pioneer. Dave was a huge impact. Yeah. Pioneer.
Yeah. Right? He became like, he was one of those, like, he didn't grow up at camp, but I can't imagine camp without him ever.
Yeah.
Like the pioneering, we talked about it somewhere. I mean, he was like, he could survive out at that pioneering campsite, like in luxury, like take a shower, have like a refrigerator. Yeah. Was I right? Did he miss the first day of camp by virtue of being at Woodstock?
I don't think it was the first day of camp. I think it was later on. I heard you talking about that too.
Okay.
And I remember this whole incident when he came back from Woodstock. That was an epic fail. If you remember that, there was some mud that happened to be down where the road was.
Yep.
And, because it had rained here too. Mm-hmm. And so they said, we'll bring the whole camp down and Dave will walk through the mud to symbolize what he had been through this past weekend.
Yeah.
And he knew that it was stupid. I remember talking to him before this. It was like, I don't understand what they think I'm going to do here, And Tom was going for it. He's like, no, we're going to bring the whole camp down and Dave's going to walk through the mud. Okay. And so Dave walked through the mud and everyone was like, huh. And that was it. And then we ring the bell next day.
Oh, God.
But I think it was mid-session. I don't think it was the first couple days.
Okay.
Because it's orientation. Missing orientation day is a no.
Oh, I know.
You're out. you know, so I don't think they would have approved that.
I know. Well, I would say that the one year that my soccer team had gone very far, and I told my coach, I was like, well, I cannot play on Monday, even though we're in the regionals. And he was like, you've got to be kidding. I was like, I've already missed orientation at this point. I'm like, my hands are tied. So
yeah. Oh, so actually missed an orientation day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. But it was, I always, you know, I called Tom and told him, and I wasn't concerned because it was for soccer, which was always kind of like, he was like, hey, you got a sport to do. Okay. Like he was always pretty okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, that would have been his genre. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
If you had gone to something else, like, hey, I'm in an opera this weekend, he would have, oh, no.
I don't think so. Or say, hey, what's fish?
Oh my! I was hoping you brought that up because that was my brother and I. Do you remember my brother Matt? He worked at the camp.
Yeah,
and we still talk about that to this day because it was just the way Tom reacted at that moment. We were in Sing.
Yeah,
and the clues had come out that John had missed that day,
right,
for this concert. So Tom is standing in front of the whole camp. He says, what is this fish? You know, and people are saying, oh, it's a band, you know, oh, he's off at this concert. It's a band, right? And he looked around for a second. He went, sayonara, baby, like that. And I remember my brother and I locked eyes, just laughing hysterically because you knew what that meant. Like, you're out. You'll never step foot in this camp again.
Yep. We still say that, me and all the Katies, we still say that to one another all the time. Sayonara, baby.
My brother and I will do it. We'll be at Christmas sometimes, and I'll be like, sayonara, baby.
It was so great. And what's funny about that is that year, Craig was driving me to camp. And we were listening to Fish every single day. So I was well aware what was happening up in Maine, that there was a festival or whatever. And he was kind of mulling whether he was going to go or not. And he didn't because he got camp, no days off. Another thing I remember about you at Sing was probably about 20 years ago now, when there was word that the cicadas were coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And you took it upon yourself to kind of warn the camp and and say that you were going to show us how they made the sound.
Yeah. That started with a guy. There was an adventure counselor named Kelly Fox. Do you remember him? I
remember. Yeah, I do.
Kelly and I, he was the head and I was the assistant. Mm-hmm. And that was probably that same year that I had done the thing with Tommy for the first year, okay. So 1993 or so. And we were just laughing out there one time because he was telling me how the cicadas make the noise. And he's like, they just rub their legs together really fast. And I'm like, you're kidding me? That's how they do it? And he's like, yeah. So then we just started doing it out there and just laughing hysterically, but I never liked doing cicada in front of all the camp. Even though they had me do it a lot, I never thought it was that funny.
Well, it kind of became, the first time you did it, we were like, what is this? This is funny because, the whole camp being like, I can hear it. Yeah. But then you did it several times that year, right? Or
they would bring me up to do it maybe twice a summer or something like that, And you're right. The little kids would be like, really trying to hear it,
Right. Yeah.
And but for me, I just remember like trying to hype it up a little more. I'd be like hopping on one foot and because I remember feeling a little foolish with it. I didn't like it, I didn't like doing it.
Well, it was important that we learned. So what's a video elephant?
So that was again, that was John Specke, that the one I had mentioned.
Okay.
Beaver Explorers.
Okay.
And the video elephant was like the mascot of the video room. Mm-hmm. They had this stuffed teddy bear, stuffed elephant mm-hmm. that would just sit in the room. And something happened. It drank too much junior camp juice, something along those lines, and it died. The video elephant died. Okay. So we ended up having this big funeral for it. We walked all the way out. This was all part of the video, you know. And we all walked out to the campsite for the explorers, and we buried it out there. And then a few years later, somebody dug it up. The video counselors, I think Jerry and Jed Duddy were the video counselors at that point, and then we went out and dug it up, and all of a sudden it was alive again. But it was awful. I mean, it was covered in dirt. It was, you know, it was
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was just a mascot type thing for those guys. You know, they just made a big deal out of the video elephant.
Yeah, and I remember it at, like, from a camper's perspective, it all of a sudden being a big thing, like one year. And then it was kind of a, like, for me anyway, I was like, no, I know what they're talking about. And I didn't. I nodded along. But
I remember they drew X's on its eyes when they died.
Do you remember that? I mean, some of the stuff, some of the videos we made just, nope, wouldn't work today. Just wouldn't work.
No way.
No.
Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, I one of the things that I thought you might, you know, want to talk about was, you know, what was my favorite video.
Well, I do want to know that. What is it?
Yeah. And it was definitely the one with the turtle. You know, it was the takeoff of Free Willy.
Oh, yes.
And I just love that one, the way that one came out.
Yeah.
Because remember, I think Greg Bell was the kid.
Yes, he is. Yeah, we've talked about that. Yeah.
The turtle. And the turtle got captured by Adam. And Adam was like, I'm going to keep this turtle forever. Right. And so now he's got to figure out a way to get this turtle from Adam. And, you know, so I remember what we ended up doing at the end, though. We recreated the Free Willy scene where the whale jumps over. Or what is it? It's a whale, right? Yeah.
It's a whale.
The whale. Yeah. So we tied a string around this turtle. And I remember we hung it over over Greg's head. We had him on his knees.
Yep.
Went over his head like that. And, you know, and he's going, and right at the moment that the kid in the movie says, we used all the music in the movie. Yep. He goes, yeah, right at that same moment that the turtle went across his head. It just came out perfect. That was definitely my favorite that we did.
Oh, that's great. Oh, man. And that started Greg Bell on a path of video. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Greg I always used in videos. He was always a good camper. You were always a good camper. You were always one that, you know, you guys had an iconic group there. You and Aaron and Adam. Was Adam your cousin? He
is. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That's so funny you say that, because Katie Bell said that too. And I was like, I didn't realize that. Of course, we thought we were the centers of our own universe. So we just assumed, but we were, our group was like, I'd say there were like a third to a half of us that were just there for 6 weeks. I just assume all of you guys are the exact same age. Like, that's crazy to me that you guys aren't all peers.
Yeah. I can see that. I always thought, you know, I when I was listening to you talk about me early on, I was thinking about the iconic people when I was there, you know, and it was Jerry, you know, John Pico, and, you know, and Todd, and I used to look at those guys like gods, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Who were some of those people? You just mentioned a few, but.
Well, Jerry was in video, mm-hmm. and he was with Zeth.
Mm-hmm.
So they were kind of running things, you know, outside of Tom, you know. Jerry, real funny. He was doing real funny videos.
Yeah.
And I think I'm trying to think of who else was kicking around at that point. I remember John was doing archery at that time.
Yeah. I remember, I don't know if this was you or it probably wasn't at this point. I think I said it. I just have a memory of a video where, you know, some of the like very important rules at camp, right? Like no running, no bare feet. And there was just a video. It just panned on John. He's at archery. It goes down to him. He's lying down. He's got no shoes on, and the camera keeps panning up, and he's just asleep. He's just asleep.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember who made that. I think it was probably that Jerry group, you know, but Bucci, you remember John Bucci? He was, you know,
ceramics, he was, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the guys that I really looked at in that way, you know? Okay. So I think everybody has that. It probably is still occurring, you know?
I think so. I mean, I don't think anyone's cooler than a camp counselor. It's the right it's the right amount of age, older, and like something about the environment at camp that you look up to these people and you're like, you know what, whatever they're doing, that's what I'm into also.
I mean, the group of counselors that I had, together, we were very close to those couple of summers though. Like we were hanging out constantly. We were going on camping trips together, canoe trips. It would be the two Kraus girls, myself, Kelly and Eric, Todd. We spent a lot of time together in those years.
Yeah. How did it? So that's like as a camper, that's what I would always like hope and expect. So I know some of you guys were Medfield people, but did it end at day 30? Was it like totally different, or like did you guys try to like bring camp like with you?
Kind of. I mean, even to this day, it kind of still exists that way. Where like the 6 weeks of camp is when I see people from camp.
Yep.
And back, I remember my Medfield friends when we would start camp. It would be myself and Scott and Tim Irwin, and they'd be like, "Oh, Susie, oh, see you later. We won't see them for 6 weeks."
Yep.
And that's kind of how it went.
Yep.
And we didn't see them for 6 weeks. We were always just dealing with camp.
Yep.
And to this day, it still has that degree. Like I'll occasionally talk to Kelly during the year, but never as much as I do during those 6 weeks.
Oh, interesting.
And Sam and Tom, same thing. I see Sam occasionally. We text occasionally, but I see him just about every day during those 6 weeks. Yeah,
because you have what do you have? Are both your kids working there, or
I have a daughter that it would just finish her CIT year.
Okay,
and the other going into her final year as an explorer.
Okay.
So and she went tender feet all the way through.
Amazing. So what's it been like for you in general, just being like watching your kids go there?
It's awesome. I mean, I love having them there. When I was there, the campers were kind of secondary to what was going on for me.
100%. Yeah.
Like they were almost in the way.
Yes. 100%.
We had, we were all just everything was about us.
Yep.
And if the campers enjoyed it, great. But
like a bonus. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't notice that anymore. And I'm grateful as a parent now,
Yes.
because now they go there and they have the camp experience and the counselors are there for them.
I couldn't agree more. So my son Aiden has he's a peanut allergy. So he has an EpiPen. And I was like, oh no, like this is a death sentence sending you there. But then of course I get there and everyone's like, the nurse, she's so wonderful. She's like, yep, absolutely. She's like got a stockpile of non-allergen foods. She's like, we're going to, all the counselors will see this. And I was like, huh. Okay.
Yeah. I think things run better at camp now in that regard. And just like they do in the schools. I mean, just, we've got better at taking care of our children,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, we 100% thought when I was a counselor, we were like, this camp is for us. Isn't it nice that there are these children here? But if they get something out of it, good for them.
No, I mean, it's fun. I'm glad you say it that way, because I definitely felt that way.
Yeah.
I just I wasn't interested in making them laugh.
So here I am, a person who's not worked at camp in 20 years doing a podcast on it. So I would say safe to say camp has probably shaped my life a little bit. Are there ways that just when you're walking around, you're like, oh, I maybe like got that for camp, or maybe you don't like recognize it, but you're like, this place changed me and I'm this way.
There's no way I would have the personality that I have without it. Not a chance.
Yeah.
Because that's what brought me out was camp.
Yeah.
I was shy. I mean, in my schools, I was never that wild guy, I mean, I might have become that later on in my high school years, but my camp persona was very different than my school persona.
Interesting.
Yeah. And There's no question that I wouldn't be as outgoing as I am.
Yeah.
And have maybe the sense of humor that I do
Yeah.
without that experience.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really, I was really pushing my kids to be there because I do have a daughter that's pretty shy.
Yeah.
And I want her to have that same deal. Like, let's bring her out. Let's show her, you know,
Absolutely.
that this is okay. It's okay to wear a crazy hat and be an idiot,
right,
you know, in front of people, you know?
Yeah.
So
in fact, it's encouraged, right?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
the
I mean,
more-
I would imagine that everybody has that same experience to a degree.
Yeah.
Everyone that works there and everyone that goes there as a camper.
Yeah. And it's, you're there, and it's like, even the people who you could probably outwardly be like, oh, I bet this person's like pretty cool in like outside of camp. Like everyone's kind of on the same playing field. So it makes it so whoever you model yourself after, like you're in good company. And, you know,
and it's all, and that I've heard that I forget who it was. Maybe it was Scott. When you guys were talking, you said that you still end up on this camp plane when you're talking to people. Like, look at you and I, right? We were able to connect right away here.
Yep.
You know, it was easy to do.
Yep.
You know, I might not have been able to do that with a different podcast host.
Right, exactly. On the other podcasts you're frequenting.
But there's a connection that people have that have been there long term.
Yeah.
You know, always have that connection, and it's awesome. I love it.
I would say it's also the people who weren't there as long as some of us who just decided never to leave. But it is interesting. There are a couple of people I went to high school with who just did like a couple of years as campers or whatever. And I bring up camp and they're like, I love that place.
Yeah.
And at first I'm like, well, why'd you leave? But it does make an immediate impact. And
I had that experience too with people that were there short term, you know, as campers, and they're like, oh my God, that place was awesome. You know, just never continued it. They never, you know, some of them may not have been invited back.
Yep.
You know, how the CITs end up being Tom's group, you know?
Yep.
So not, you know, if you weren't lucky enough to be in his realm, then you might not have been back.
Do you remember how many people were CITs in your class?
It wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
It was, you know, if it was more than 6 or 8, I would have been surprised.
Yeah.
No.
It's because it's huge, right? It's like 20 or something.
Yeah. And that's been an issue this year, actually, because they had such a young assistant crowd this past year that they don't know how many CITs they're going to be able to bring back as assistants. So,
that's rough.
Yeah, they had a lot of first-year assistants, and normally you know how it goes. The first-year assistants, you know, some of them become heads, and then the heads move on. You know,
right.
But this particular group is very young.
You break a lot of hearts that way, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
People are counting on it, and then it's like, we don't have any room for you.
Right. I can't imagine if that had happened to me at any point, you know, because it would have been heartbreaking.
Yeah. It's like trying to picture your summer doing something other than going to camp for those 6 weeks. It's hard to pick. I remember the first summer I wasn't there. It was very, very strange, and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, what do you think the best activity is? What would be your favorite? Give me your top 3.
When I was a camper?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love games as a camper.
Okay.
I loved adventure as a camper.
Yeah.
And video. I mean, I really enjoyed video all around. Yeah. You know, most of the time with video, for me, it was about the video counselors. The video counselors ended up with an allure, you know, that was a little different than everybody else, you know, had that cool image, you know, and I just loved being a part of that. You know, I loved being down in video as a camper, you know, just watching those guys, you know?
Yeah. Well, it also was, or maybe this was always part of your camp experience. You didn't have video as a younger camper. So it was one of those things that when you hit whatever age it was, then you
for me, it was video there because I was never there as a younger camper. So when I got there, I was, you know, we were right into video.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Yeah, that's I think those are pretty solid. Did you ever do the like high wire at Adventure when they
Yeah,
had that? That was
yeah,
cool.
yeah. That didn't last too long.
Nope.
How high was that? That might have been up about 15 feet or so, right?
It's pretty darn high, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. That wall that was out there, I was part of building that wall.
Really?
Yeah, that guy. Remember that guy Preston?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, came that year, and I was his assistant. I was his first assistant,
Okay.
and that's that first week we built that wall.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I didn't know what I was doing.
No, just hammer here. That's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
You're like, hold this.
Yeah.
But
that the wall, I remember when it came to be, because it wasn't one of the ones that was always there at Adventure.
Yeah.
And I remember it's one of those things that that is now like just a staple, just part of camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when that happened. But we used to always love the tire swings at Adventure. And that apparently now is like a first week type thing. And we used to have to build up to that where your whole tribe.
They go right to the tire swing now.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like, I think they've kind of upped their game out in the woods. So
no. Yeah. See, my kids don't tell me a lot.
No.
They'll get into it a little bit with me, but they don't tell me the day to day that much.
Yeah. You have to get them on the pod. One of the best things I found, and I spoke about this, is that Ty and Scott Howe and Kelly would sometimes like text me in the middle of the day, and I was like, yes, because I will never hear about this otherwise. Like they'd send me pictures, and the best.
Yes, that's a good aspect of being an old friend. Yes, I've got a few photos of my kids doing things that normally I wouldn't have gotten.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I've had a few things where Mia's been up like at Sing doing something, and all of a sudden I get a video of it. I'll be at work and I'll get a video of Mia at Sing.
That's awesome.
And that is awesome.
Yeah.
So
seriously,
I'll take the French benefits.
Absolutely.
Because I was thinking about camp and the nostalgia feel of it, and for me, the spot where I always come across, and I have that like Field of Dreams moment, where they used to cross the foul line, and they,
yep,
it's the rocks coming out of the stables.
Oh, okay.
Up that door, that side door, and you walk on those rocks, and I look ahead and you can see the whole camp, and you say, oh, I'm at camp. That's my moment where I'm like, oh God,
yep.
It hits. So
I like that. I like that as a spot. And also combined with that spot is like certain like smells too down there at the stables, just kind of smells a certain way. My spot for that is halfway between that new Sam's office and the picnic table, like right on the top of the hill there, where you can just kind of see everything. And it's just like, I think it's like, it's the same idea of like where you can see the most amount of camp, and just like,
it's also the feel of those rocks. That's the only spot in the camp that you walk across rocks like that, and the sound of them, and it just gets me. I'm like, oh, I'm here. That's awesome. Sayonara, baby.